Welcome to the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast, powered by the Snowbird US Day Tracker app. I'm your host, Gerry Scott, and my goal is to give you answers to your cross-border questions, to ease the stress of a cross-border move or extended trip, and to keep you up to date on all you need to know with cross-border rules and regulations. Now let's get on with the show. Well, welcome to an edition of the Snowbirds Expat Radio Podcast. This is going to be very, very interesting because I remember as kids, we used to always say, so what are you? And I would respond by saying, I think I'm Irish and Welsh. Now, that is a lot more important nowadays because we're hearing about all these lost Canadians. And we're dealing with what we call Bill C3. And today, as one of our guests, is Sheila, and she's from Oakville, Ontario. And this is what she does. We've talked about this for years and years and years, and it really is about genealogy. So, Sheila, you've got the floor, and educate us. What is this, and why is it so important in today's world?
Sure. So genealogists are having a moment, especially Canadian ones. Effective December, I want to say 15th of 2025, Bill C3 came into effect. And Bill C3 is all about, it's an amendment to Canadian citizenship, and it deals with a lot of the issues that folks have had in the past in getting their citizenship. In previous bills, people were restricted to a first generational limit. So if your parent, for instance, was born or naturalized in Canada, you were eligible, and there's nuances to it, of course, but you were eligible to claim Canadian citizenship. But there were several historical events, different sorts of acts that came into play that prevented individuals from claiming that citizenship. If their mother, for instance, married a foreign alien, so that would be somebody from the US or another country, their children would lose their Canadian citizenship, even though their mother was born there. So there was a bunch of amendments made, and over time, there was still what was considered to be some of these lost Canadians. And as a result, Bill C3 now eliminates the generational limit. So if you have a Canadian ancestor, born or naturalized, anywhere in your history that you can document, you can claim Canadian citizenship. So currently there's quite a few individuals, especially Americans, that are taking a look at that. And so genealogists are having a heyday. And we are looking at people's ancestry and documenting their Canadian lineage, which is fabulous.
Well, I know we've always promised not to get political on our podcast here, but how can we not? I mean, do you think it's really, with all the uncertainty in the States with the current leadership of the current administration, is this being motivated that all these Americans want to become Canadians?
So I think that there's a portion of them that are motivated by the current events down south. I think there's some that feel that perhaps Canada is a better option for them. But I think that there's also a portion of them that are interested in sort of giving homage to their ancestors that were born in Canada. So there's older generations that perhaps know that they were Canadians at some point, and they want to sort of honor that by becoming Canadian citizen. So I think there's a portion of that as well. And I think there's some that are just sort of interested in seeing what it could do for them if they wanted to become a Canadian and perhaps live here. So I think that there's several different motivations.
Yeah. So how does that process work? I find you, I go through this process. Is there forms? Is there a kit? Do some people, I mean, I'm assuming everybody in the United States, and I apologize to all my American friends, but don't they all want to find out that they are lost Canadians? And how do you do it? How do you start that process?
So it really just depends. So if you're interested in doing that yourself, and you know what your heritage is, and you know where your Canadian ancestor, how many generations back they are, you can go and visit the IRCC. So that's the Immigration Refugee Canadian Citizenship website. It's a government site in Canada, and They will walk you through the process of how to download those applications, and you can go through and fill them out yourself. If you have a more complicated background, if you have something that perhaps is maybe questionable, that you're not quite sure, you want to reach out to perhaps an RCIC, who are immigration consultants. If you have something that's even more complex, you might want to reach out to an immigration lawyer, and those individuals will help you navigate the process a little bit better. So for instance, if you're an adoptee, those are different forms and applications that you need to follow, but it's still entirely possible for you to gain that Canadian citizenship. But again, those are something that immigration consultants and immigration lawyers should advise you on. But there's a lot of people that are also taking it upon themselves and also finding genealogy as a new hobby as part of all of this. And they're reaching out and asking all of our archivals, all of our historical societies and genealogy societies. They're asking them for help and trying to discover where all the records are for themselves and trying to document it themselves. So there's that option as well.
I've got two questions for you.
Sure.
How did you get involved with this? And my next question is that what tools do you have available that I think you mentioned a few of them, registries and different things, but how did you get involved with it? Because I know you and I have talked about this before, and the only time that I ever heard genie was that, hoping that I could walk along one of the beaches and find a bottle and there'd be a little genie. And
Yeah.
it would grant me like 3 or 4 or 5, how many wishes I needed to get to me where I'm going. But yeah, so how did you get involved with it?
So in terms of the citizenship by descent, I actually found out about it online, and I actually was at a meeting of a historical society that I belong to, and ran into a gentleman that was visiting from the States, and he said that he was working on this process, and I said, "Well, isn't that awesome? And how can I help?" So I have been helping distant family members as well as clients. Working with RCICs in getting that citizenship and documenting their lineage. But for me, genealogy started a long time ago. I've been at this for close to 20 years now. And so I love absolutely everything about genealogy. And I love documenting people's heritage and looking at their lineages. It's really a wonderful thing to get into.
We'll be right back.
Thinking about becoming a Canadian citizen? If you're a U.S. resident living in Canada on a work permit, permanent resident status, or planning your path to citizenship, you already know the rule: 1,095 days of physical presence in 5 years. Meet the Canada Physical Presence Tracker, a simple, reliable mobile app that helps you log your days in Canada, track multi-year stays, and monitor your progress towards citizenship right from your phone. No spreadsheets, no guesswork, just clear tracking so you can stay on track. Download Canada Physical Presence Tracker from the App Store or tap the link in the show description. And if becoming a Canadian citizen is part of your plan, you're already in the right place. Snowbirds Expat Radio features conversations with top immigration lawyers and cross-border experts to help you understand the rules before they become a problem. Build your path to citizenship with confidence.
So take me back 20 years. One day you're not into this, and now you're into this. So what happened in your life that you thought, wow, this is interesting?
I gave birth to my second son, and it ended up being in the baby book that I had bought, and there was a big family tree in there. And I got back to my grandparents, and I thought, I don't know necessarily all of their birth dates, and that's how it started. And I've been doing it ever since, in every moment I possibly can, every vacation, everything.
Yeah, so it is really interesting. So, okay, now we know why you got into this. Now, but 20 years later, I mean, what are the tools? What has developed? Has technology and AI really helped
It
your
does.
business?
Right. So, so in terms of, there's, a couple of different aspects of it. So, most people want to know where they can find all their records. And of course, the largest of the databases that have collections of records is Ancestry. And you can start off with ancestry.ca and get memberships that will give you, it's limited to just Canadian records, if that is your main background. I have had the World Deluxe, not to promote Ancestry, of course, but I've had the World Deluxe access for many, many years. And that gives you records to any of their collections all around the world. The other one that I use quite frequently and quite a bit more these days is Family Search. So Family Search is run by the Mormon Church in Salt Lake City, Utah. And they have collections that are free, so you don't have to pay. You do have to sign up and get an account. And they do allow you to build your family tree there as well. And they have a wonderful, wonderful collection of Canadian records. There are some other sites that are also available. Find My Past if you have ancestry in Europe. The other one is My Heritage. They also have records, and there's overlap between a lot of these sites, but they all offer something a little slightly different. But you will hear genealogists everywhere say the same thing. Not everything is online. So the wonderful part in doing genealogy is visiting some of these sites, the museums and the archives, to actually go through paper versions that have not been digitized. And there's still a lot of information out there.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. One of the problems that we encounter, of course, is that many of these records are written in either other languages. So if you're not familiar with Quebecois French, AI can certainly help you determine what they're saying in the records. And when you get further back, things are written in Latin. Things are written in Old English, and they're in paleographic script. And AI is getting better at interpreting those records. We're not quite there yet, but it's coming along. It's certainly coming along. The other thing that AI offers in terms of helping individuals is to go through and see where the records might be. So if you have an inkling of perhaps which parish your ancestor might have lived in, an approximate time frame, certainly any of the AI tools can go out there and say, have you looked at these sites here? And have you considered taking a look at these passenger lists or other census records that are available? So it can sort of kind of give you clues as to where to look. It's not always accurate, and certainly you should ask for sources when it provides that information to you, so you can take a look and see whether or not the information is accurate. So,
I'm sure like myself, and I think a lot of people that will be listening to this podcast, I mean, outside of our grandparents that we get to meet at a very young age and spend very little time with them, it's got to be what started off as a hobby for you. Now it's turned into this business because of this C3.
Yes, it has. So again, as long as you can document your lineage back to a Canadian ancestor, they call it the G0 anchor. As long as you can document that, and you want births or baptismals, and you want marriage records that provide information about family units, so you can link the individuals together, you can claim Canadian citizenship. So I think that's really awesome for a lot of people.
I think so. So now if I'm trying to find out I'm an American, I'm living in Canada, United States, and I find out that I'm a lost Canadian, is there some kind of official stamp that genealogists, are they part of this organization? They go stamp and help with the process rather than you trying to do everything on your own?
Sure. So there's different organizations that genealogists belong to. I'm a member of the Association of Professional Genealogists, APG. There are some individuals that go down the path of being accredited. I'm not accredited, but I have done a lot of courses related to genealogy because there's only actually, as far as I know, there's only 2 universities that actually offer postgraduate degrees or certificates, I should say, in genealogy. One is Brigham Young University in Salt Lake City. So, of course, with the Mormons, they offer that as a course. I decided to go the path of the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, and they offer a genealogy, heraldry, and paleographic course, and which covers a lot of Scottish records, which is part of my ancestry. But they teach sort of techniques, proper methods, certainly ethics and morals associated with the genealogy, because it can get quite messy sometimes. So those are the two major offerings in terms of schools that offer it. There are other things that you can take in terms of courses, lots of books you can read. Certainly, any of the genealogical societies will offer you, sometimes they offer courses for people as new members. So there's lots of opportunity for people to learn about genealogy.
Now, I know it's become very popular with citizenship and this C3 and all these lost Canadians, but do people ever go back into their heritage just to find out from a mental health perspective why, if crazy runs with, in the family, do they go back and try and find out where that craziness started? And
I'm sure that there are some people that do. You can always take a look at, if you get death certificates for starters, you can take a look and see whether or not sort of what health issues they passed from. That can sort of be an indication. Um, Certainly, if you take a look at census records, sometimes if individuals were inmates in a hospital or perhaps a prison, that can indicate that there might be some mental health issues there as well. But mental health wasn't a thing back in the day, and it was uh, often a form of shame in the family, and people didn't talk about it much. So you won't get anything that's very specific in terms of mental health, but you can sort of surmise some things, depending on how the records play out.
now, how far, based on your experience, when you started tracking this heritage of an individual, how far had you gone back? Are we talking the 1500s?
So there are some lines that I have managed to get back to the around the 1600s for my own family. But in terms of the citizenship by descent, the furthest I've managed to go back is about 9 generations so far to find that Canadian ancestor. And you'll find that there are pockets of them that throughout our own history, for instance, individuals that were forced to leave. Ended up in Louisiana. We won't go through all the history there, but there are French and Acadians that ended up in the U.S. for lots of reasons, and they can trace their heritage all the way back to Canada in the early 1700s. It's really fabulous, some of the records that exist.
We'll be right back. If you enjoy this podcast, my new book is your next step. It's written for Canadian snowbirds who want to better understand the cross-border rules that can impact their time in the U.S., from taxes and healthcare to travel and long-term planning. Visit www.snowbirdsheadingsouth.com to learn more about the book. Well, I guess the thing about, maybe more so here on the West, we don't have that much history compared to Eastern Canada or even in Europe. We just recently were in Switzerland last week, and there's just so much more. So is it more popular there that you would be able to see, and it would be easier for people to go back to the 1600s or the 1500s and really, we read about all these kings and queens and
Yeah.
monarchies.
So if you're lucky enough to descend from somebody who is of royalty in some way, those lineages are usually well documented, and you can usually find that out pretty easily after a few generations back. But the vast majority of us don't descend from royalty. The vast majority of us ascend from farmers and servants and other types of occupations, and we're just regular folks, and that's important too. We don't all have to be descended from kings, but there are certainly people that get into it and want to find out whether or not they're royalty in some way. I'm here to say that the DNA has probably watered down enough that you probably don't have blue blood anymore.
Okay. Now, I guess, is there two ways of doing this? Do you find some people say, okay, who's the most important person I've ever read about? I wonder if I'm connected to that person. So do you find that they could pick somebody and then go forward, or is it always about going backwards?
Usually we encourage people to go backwards. So you want to start with your parents and you want to make those links back through your generations. For instance, I have both McDonald's and Campbell's in my line,
Cool.
and
Right.
those surnames are very, very, very popular.
Mm.
And the naming conventions cause it that several people in the same area at the same time will all have the same name. and very likely they're not necessarily related. So just because you have a popular surname doesn't necessarily mean you're related to the king or the queen. And so certainly you need to do it properly, and going backwards in time is the way to go.
You know, it's interesting because the more we talk about this, I find this so fascinating, and I never really given it much thought. Like I say, outside of my grandparents, I thought, well, whatever. Maybe they just showed up in a spaceship and we all kind of took off from there. But now, do you find, is there any TV stations out there that are just dedicated to genealogy or documentaries? And
So there are some really great shows that you can watch. They're not, full TV stations or anything, but Finding My Roots by Henry Louis Gates. He's a very, very popular one in the industry. There are some series that you can find in Europe where they go through and the names escape me off the top of my head, but there are some ones that go through and they help people find their missing ancestors or their missing family. A lot of it is people who are adopted and who don't know that lineage and don't know that history, and there's a lot of DNA involved, which I haven't talked about. But DNA certainly adds that science aspect to the history, and you can actually find a lot of information about your ancestors just through your DNA. That being said, DNA is not part of the citizenship by descent, unless, of course, you're an adoptee and you want to find out who your biological parents are, and they perhaps have an ancestor that is a Canadian citizen. And then that's where that would come into play. But right now, IRCC is not accepting anything related to DNA, which is unfortunate.
what's interesting is when I think of shows called Is It Back in the Future with Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, and
Wow.
how they had to go back and they had to be careful not to alter too many things,
Mhm.
but interesting shows of it.
And
Well,
it's
I
really
gotta,
neat. When you take a look and you think that, you're sort of one ethnicity or you're from just one area, when you start to dig in and you start to take a look back, we're all from somewhere else. And
Mhm.
it's when you take a look at your ancestors, you realize really how brave they were, and the things that they did and the risks and chances that they took to come here to make a better life. And so that's something to be honored.
Well, you've really got me. I can't stop thinking now about, like I say, discovering beyond. I want to say that there was some heritage on my mother's side where they were Doukhobors,
Mhm.
so that would be kind of Russian descent, wouldn't
Right?
it? Yeah. So I heard a little bit of stories, and the sad thing is too is that by the time you mature enough to really start to enjoy these conversations with our parents and asking the questions, they don't get to stick around that long. So so we got nobody else to kind of find out and ask the questions,
Yeah.
but to get Sheila a call and find a little bit more about it. So I can see this is just not just for immigration. This is just something where people are really wanting to find out more about. You could, like you say, how brave our ancestors were.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, we don't have to talk price or anything because that's not important. I think people, I mean, this to me sounds priceless when it comes to the importance of finding out, never mind that you're a lost Canadian, you have a chance to move to this wonderful country that we have, but all the other stuff that comes with it, all the questions and finding out more about it. But how do people get a hold of you?
My website, my company is called Kinalytic, so it's www.kinalytic.com. And if they want to send me an email and ask me some questions, in addition to doing the citizenship by descent, I'm also available to do any sort of traditional genealogy, which is what we've been talking about. Also very familiar with the DNA side of things. I'm also working as an investigative genetic genealogist. I volunteer at the moment, and so I'm very familiar with the DNA side of things as well. Love that stuff. And yeah, if they have any questions at all, I'm happy to help.
So now before we let you go, you mentioned DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how does that work, and how does that roll into oh, geez, hang on. How does it all work? Yeah, genealogy,
You're,
genealogy,
you're a joke
genealogy.
online.
What does
Yeah.
it roll in? How does that all come together?
The way that the DNA works is that you take your test at one of the big sites. So that's Ancestry, 23andMe. There's a few others, and if you're interested in finding out a little bit more, you can upload your DNA profile once you've completed that, and you can upload it to sites called GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA. And they provide you additional information more so than what Ancestry and 23andMe can provide you. If you want to know more about your ethnicity and how that breaks down, Ancestry does do it. It's based on their current database, but the GEDmatch and FTDNA have a little bit more specific and sometimes older ethnicities that you can find. And if you want to find out if you're a little bit Neanderthal, 23andMe is the way to go. They actually do some statistics on how much Neanderthal DNA you have, and we all have some, and which is always kind of interesting to see.
I got to tell you, I got so many questions, and I'm thinking about this because, you can take DNA from a live person, and I know that you can take DNA from if you have remains of a person, but how does that all work? How does that work together compared? Okay, I want to know if my mom and dad were my mom and dad.
Yeah, sure. So you would need to get some DNA from them or some of their siblings. That would certainly be an indication as to whether or not your parents are truly your parents. You can also do a DNA test at as I mentioned, gedmatch.com, and they will take your DNA and take a look to see. It's called Are Your Parents Related? And so you can actually go and see whether or not your parents are sort of what you expected. But Ancestry will give you a lot in terms of where your cousins are. So you can find out cousins that are on your father's side or cousins on your mother's side. So that will give you an indication as to whether or not it's correct. But in the industry, we often talk about something called an NPE, a non-paternity event, and or misattributed parentage is another term that they use. And so if there is a child born out of wedlock, DNA will certainly provide you an indication of that. And it might not be your parents, it might be your grandparents, or even perhaps a great-grandparent. So it will certainly indicate that for you. And the truth of the matter is, every family tree has one. And so most genetic genealogists are not surprised when they see that anymore. And people, unfortunately, whether intentionally or not, lie on documents and they lie on the records, and for a multitude of reasons. And the DNA, unfortunately, doesn't lie. And so all of those secrets and will certainly come out with the DNA.
Well, as a follow-up to this podcast, we're going to have a conversation because I want to see how far we can go back.
Okay.
And see exactly. I'd always joke about my younger brothers, saying that I don't think you're really my brother, which makes me the baby of the family.
Okay.
And all those rights that he was given because he was the baby of the family,
Uh-huh.
there's some compensation that is due to me. So,
Okay.
but anyway, we'll have fun with it. But I'll tell you, I find this very interesting. I know we have another podcast coming up with with a couple of our lawyers that we work with, immigration lawyers, and discussing this C3, the bill. Do I get it right? Yes, C3. And, yeah, and I find it very interesting. So we'll have a follow up, but then you and I will have some fun with it, finding out about this Gerry stock guy, and were there any famous people in his past, and it would be fun to join.
I can certainly help with that, but you have to do your DNA.
Okay. Well, there you are. Well, sure. Full disclosure, right? Full transparency. That's what I always tell people. But anyhow, I truly enjoyed our conversation today, Sheila, and I wish your family all the best. And
Thank you.
I find this very interesting. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for listening to the Snowbird Expat Radio Podcast. The best way you can support the podcast is to forward the episode to a friend, and please don't hesitate to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Now, before you go, let me leave you with one of my favorite quotes. Be kind to all, the world is small.